You cannot see it, you cannot smell it, you cannot taste it, you will not feel it enter your lungs. It has no warning, no odor, no color, no immediate symptom that tells your body something is wrong. It is just there, seeping up through the soil, through the rock, through the foundation of the house where you sleep, and it is killing people. Radon gas is the #1 cause of lung cancer among non-smokers in the United States. The EPA estimates it is responsible for approximately 21,000 lung cancer deaths every year, 21,000 people every year, from something most of them never knew was there. Now consider this. Radon is a direct byproduct of uranium decay. It forms wherever uranium exists in the ground, and the communities that live closest to uranium mining and milling operations, the communities that drink the water, breathe the air, and wash the dust off their families at the end of the day, have been living with elevated radon and radiation exposure for decades. Some of them knew, most of them did not. The federal government knew before they did. This episode is about what uranium does to the human body, what it has already done, and what the documented record shows about who knew, when they knew it, and what they chose to do and not do about it. Here is what the science says in plain language. Uranium is radioactive. As it breaks down inside the Earth, a process that takes thousands of years, it produces a series of decay products. One of those products is radium. And as radium breaks down, it produces a gas. That gas is radon. When radon is inhaled, it does not pass through the body harmlessly. It decays further, releasing alpha particles directly inside lung tissue. Those particles damage DNA. That damage over time leads to cancer. The World Health Organization classifies radon as a Group 1 human carcinogen. So does the International Agency for Research on Cancer. So does the U.S. National Toxicology Program. So does the EPA. There is no disputed science here. The classification is unanimous across every major health authority on Earth. What has been disputed, for decades, is not whether radon causes cancer. It is whether the people most exposed to it deserve to be told. They were not told. And the people who did not tell them knew exactly what they were withholding. This is not only a story about miners, and it is not only a story about one community. I lived in Rifle, Colorado for over a decade. My neighbors were ranchers, farmers, tradespeople, families who had been in that valley for generations. They were not uranium workers. They were not activists. They were people living their lives in a place they loved, and nearly half of them may have had elevated radon in their homes without ever knowing it. Garfield County, which includes Rifle, Silt, Meeker, and the surrounding communities, is classified by the state of Colorado as Zone 1 for radon exposure, the highest risk category. In testing conducted by Garfield County Public Health, 44% of homes tested came back above the EPA action limit, nearly half. The average radon level in Colorado homes is 6.4 picocuries per liter. Living at Colorado's average level is the equivalent of having 200 chest x-rays every single year in your own home without knowing it. The good news, and there is good news here, is that radon can be tested and mitigated. Test kits are available free of charge through Garfield County Public Health in Rifle and Glenwood Springs. Mitigation systems typically cost between $1,500 and $2,500. The state of Colorado offers a low-income radon mitigation assistance program, LIRMA, that provides free mitigation systems to qualifying low-income households. That information is in the description. Test your home, know your number. The uranium mining boom in the American West began in 1948. The Atomic Energy Commission announced it would buy any uranium ore that could be mined at a guaranteed high price. Hundreds of mines opened across Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. Many of them were on or adjacent to Navajo Nation land. The Navajo people found work in the mines. Times were hard. The money was real, and nobody told them what they were walking into. A study published in 1879 had documented that 75% of uranium miners in Europe died from lung cancer. That data existed. The Atomic Energy Commission had access to it. In 1942, a scientist at the National Cancer Institute formally reported the cause and effect relationship between uranium mining and lung cancer. He was repressed under pressure from the AEC. The AEC considered any reference to occupational cancer and uranium mining to be, in their words, not in the public interest. In 1950, the U.S. Public Health Service began following approximately 4,000 Navajo uranium miners. To gain access from mine owners, the researchers agreed they would not tell the miners what they were studying. The miners went back into the mines. In 1962, 12 years in, the first report showing a statistical correlation between uranium mining and lung cancer was published. The federal government set a radon safety standard for mines in 1969. Navajo miners were still not being informed of the health risks as late as 1971. A 1995 report by the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments formally acknowledged the federal government had committed an ethical breach. Had the miners been told the true purpose of the study, they could have used that information to advocate for their own interests. They were not told, they could not advocate, and they got sick. The uranium mine at Shiprock, New Mexico, operated through 1970. 150 Navajo men worked there. By 1980, 10 years after the mine closed, 133 of them had died from lung cancer, from pulmonary fibrosis, from the diseases that follow when uranium dust fills a lung over years and decades without protection, without warning. 133 out of 150. That is not a statistic. That is a community. Among Navajo uranium miners compared to Navajo men with no mining history, those with a uranium mining history had 28.6 times greater risk of developing lung cancer. 28.6 times. Workers carried radioactive dust home on their clothing, their boots, their skin. Children played in tailings piles. Some families used mine waste to build their homes and chimneys, not knowing what it contained. The contamination did not stay at the mine entrance. It traveled home. On July 16, 1979, 5 weeks after 3 Mile Island, a dam at the United Nuclear Corporation's uranium mill in Church Rock, New Mexico, failed. 1,000 tons of radioactive tailings and 93 million gallons of acidic, radioactive wastewater poured into the Rio Puerco. The contamination traveled approximately 80 miles downstream into eastern Arizona. People who waded into the river that day suffered chemical burns on their feet and legs. Livestock were lost. Crops were contaminated. The Navajo communities along the Rio Puerco drank from that water source. Before Fukushima in 2011, the Church Rock spill was the second largest release of radioactive material in American history, behind only Chernobyl. Most Americans have never heard of it. 3 Mile Island got the headlines. Church Rock, which released more radiation, which affected a Navajo community, which contaminated 80 miles of river, was largely ignored by the national press. The people who lived along the Rio Puerco did not have the luxury of ignoring it. In 1990, the United States Congress passed the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. The language of that law includes something unusual for a federal statute. It states that Congress, and I am quoting the document directly, apologizes on behalf of the nation to individuals who were involuntarily subjected to increased risk of injury and disease to serve the national security interests of the United States. An act of Congress, an apology on behalf of the nation. Since 1990, RECA paid out more than $2.5 billion to more than 41,000 claimants. The program expired in June of 2024. Congress did not renew it before the deadline. For over a year, no new claims were accepted. In 2025, RECA was revived through federal legislation. Coverage was extended through 1990. South Dakota is on the list of eligible states for uranium worker compensation. That is not a footnote. That is a direct line between the documented harm of uranium mining in the American West, the federal government's formal acknowledgement of that harm, and the ground where Encore Energy now wants to mine uranium in the Black Hills. The apology is on the record. The compensation program exists because the harm is documented, and now they want to start again. There are still more than 500 abandoned uranium mines on the Navajo Nation alone, more than 10,000 across the American West. Not a single radiation health center has been built by the federal government near the Navajo Nation. The science on radon is settled. The historical record on what the government knew is documented. The cancer rates are in the Congressional Record. None of that stopped the approval on June 16, 2026. What we leave behind is not a hypothetical. It is a pattern. It has names. It has addresses. It has death certificates. The question is whether we have learned anything from them. The documents are in the description. This is Words with Wentz. Know the truth.
Let the signal cut through the noise. Reading between the lines. Every story leaves a trace, unlocking time and space, finding truth with Wentz. Words